This is TWiT.
You may have heard of NEC somewhere along the way. It's no spring chicken. NEC's been around for a very long time, but you may not know that in the world of facial recognition, they are one of the primary players, it seems. Yet they seem to be passing beneath the radar. And Dave Gershgorn from OneZero has been following the company very closely and sifted through 1,300 pages of public documents. That sounds like a lot of fun. To create a comprehensive picture of this easy-to-miss Japanese company. And he joins us now. Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, it's always great to get you on. We appreciate your time. So first of all, if NEC is such a big player in this space, why are they so overlooked? Why do companies like Clearview AI get all the scrutiny instead?
So I think Clearview AI is definitely deserved in getting all the scrutiny that it's been getting, because they offered something that was kind of truly unique, which was scraping social media profiles and everything like that. Yeah. But NEC is kind of unique in how long it's been doing biometrics. It's been doing it for, nearly 40 years. And it's really not at its heart a consumer company like Amazon or Google or Microsoft, where a lot of people have been worried about their influence in facial recognition and biometrics. So a lot of their contracts are directly with governments, or directly with states, or directly with private companies that typically don't brag about who's making their facial recognition. I think a lot of the scrutiny for Amazon and Microsoft and Google is because they're publicly facing companies, and people know about their APIs. People know about kind of what the software they sell is. So NEC has kind of flown under the radar just because they were largely erased from the public eye when they kind of stumbled in the consumer tech market in the 90s.
Right. Yeah. That's about the time that I stopped hearing very much about NEC. So I was very interested to read your article from that perspective, especially to kind of see what they've been up to, and apparently a lot. So, you mentioned they have more than 1,000 contracts in the biometrics for its biometric systems. What kind of places is their technology appearing? Where is that materializing right now? And in what ways?
Yeah, totally. So the places that you will probably see it if you fly internationally is maybe in a Delta terminal. They have they're almost like kiosks where it's a little camera, and then it takes a picture of your face and scans it against the picture from your passport that's been previously stored by the Department of Homeland Security and is given to Delta for this purpose. If you have a mugshot taken in kind of any state, actually 23 or so states in the United States, and you commit a crime, the state police or local police might search for your face based on that mugshot. And even if you are in a 7-Eleven in Japan, you might come across NEC's technology where they are trialing this. Japan has really been adopting it since NEC is a Japanese company. Right. They have contracts with all of the convenience stores, like the big ones, which are 7-Eleven and a competitor. And they're also going to be screening 90% of the travelers going in and out of Japan with NEC's facial recognition by the end of 2020, allegedly. So it's kind of all over the place, both in the public and the private sector.
So when you say 7-Eleven, do you mean they have systems set up inside of 7-Eleven stores to kind of actively do face scanning on anybody that walks into the store, and then that's fed potentially into a system that scans that against a database of known criminals, let's say, or whatever, in order to identify them quicker?
Or am I getting coupons? No. Do I get half off?
No.
Or is it a loyalty program?
Yeah. It's more like an Amazon Go cashier list checkout type thing.
All right. So that's a little less menacing, I suppose.
Yeah. So that I'm glad you asked. So it's more they'll recognize your face when you walk up with your egg salad sandwich or whatever, and then it'll automatically be oh yeah, you're Dave. Here, here's 10% off, and out you go.
Okay.
Cool. So I don't need a coupon anymore. I just need my face.
Yeah, your face is your coupon in this modern world.
And like on one hand, like, okay, great. Like that's a convenience. On the other hand, it's like, wow, that feels so cavalier. Like, with using biometric data for something as simple as like a discount on something.
Honestly, I think I'd mostly just be offended if I only got 10% off for this face.
Yeah, I know. That face deserves a lot more than 10%.
I'm kidding. No,
it's actually... Yeah, no, it's really interesting that you bring that up, because it is something where now that they have a picture of your face, they can analyze it and say target you with different ads and things like that. I'm not saying that NEC provides that, but it's like, okay, so they'll determine whether you're male or female, how old you are about, like how often you come into the store, since they know who you are, and they can target advertisements at you based on those things, or give you special discounts if you come in 10 times a month, or so it really unlocks a lot more kind of private surveillance, if you will. That is somewhat of a benefit to you, but also gives a lot more data to the company.
Yeah, you're right. It's like on one hand, it's the here's the door for the consumer to be okay handing over or authorizing the passage of their face into these systems. Like, okay, great, I get a discount. But then what happens with that data beyond there? Does that end up in another system that, identifies this person in this way or that, and they don't even know what's going on in the background, which is, at the core of all of kind of our data gathering kind of crises or whatever they are right now. There's a lot of awareness around what happens to data and the fact that we just really don't know. Most people don't understand what's actually happening to all this data and how it's being used sometimes against them.
Yeah, and I think all of this would also be able to be subpoenaed, and it's like, you at the 7-Eleven at this time, and then it's like, okay, you were, and here's who you're with, if the camera has a wide angle, and like it introduces all of these really kind of wild situations.
For sure. Now, how accurate are these systems? Is NEC's facial recognition system known to be a pretty solid, accurate source?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question, because there's not a 100% clear answer. Based on tests from the U.S. government, the U.S. government operates the National Institute of Standards and Technology. I always mess that up. I always want to say science and technology, but it's standards and technology. And they have a data set with 16 million images in it, and they'll run it. They'll run all of these images through with watch lists of 200,000 people, and they'll give a pretty good idea of how these facial recognition systems would work in ideal settings. So NEC ranks at the top in the NIST settings, or within the top 5, within the top 3 actually, typically, and depending on the algorithm and the test, they're like highly rated. But outside of the lab, it's kind of a different story. There aren't many objective kind of third-party audits of this NEC software, which is called NeoFace. But one of them that exists was founded to be not too great. There were a lot of false positives, and out of the 46 people identified, like 80-something% of them are wrong. And it was like a pretty egregious mess up. So it's unclear how the technology kind of functions outside of the lab. That being said, I wasn't able to find any like high-profile cases where NEC was being sued because someone was, arrested under false pretenses. And so it's really we don't know. It's a kind of a really complicated question.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, how involved has NEC been in kind of the legislation and regulation that seems to be happening, at least here in the U.S.? There's certainly a movement towards a lot more attention being paid to this from the government's perspective. Are they involved in kind of shaping that narrative, involved in the politics that are behind this?
Yes, they totally are. And in the last year, 2019, they ramped up their lobbying, more than sixfold. In 2018, they had a lobbying firm like on retainer, pretty much, and they spent about $100,000 doing that. And then in 2019, they spent nearly $700,000 actively lobbying on issues like the Department of Homeland Security buying more biometrics, including facial recognition, based on lobbying documents that I read. And then also they lobbied against. Well, actually, I can't say against. They lobbied for balance on the Commercial Facial Recognition Act of 2019, which would put in just some guidelines and some consent into the commercial acquisition of biometrics data. So they said that they kind of engaged with both major sponsors of the bill and gave them the industry perspective, which what I would imagine is trying to soften some of the language and give some concessions. So maybe not lobby against the bill in its entirety, but definitely try and carve out some caveats and make it a little bit more, I'm sure, as they would say, business friendly.
Right. A little bit more beneficial to their bottom line.
Exactly.
Yeah, you also write along these lines that NEC U.S. President is a Masahiro Akino saw the work of the EFF and ACLU and a few others as impediments to its business. There were some leaked slides that I think you included in your article. Actually, I don't know if they were leaked, but there were slides that were included there that kind of assumed as much, that seemed to refer to them as much, called the work misinformation specifically. So again, that kind of seems like wanting to kind of shape the narrative a little bit. Personally, I respect organizations like the EFF and the ACLU for looking out for people's privacy. So when they're talking about misinformation, what exactly is that? Is that just in their business interest to poke holes in what they're saying, or is there some truth to that?
Yeah, so I think that so on the provenance of the video, it was a unlisted YouTube video that was a closed door event for the Japan Society of NYC that I guess they had uploaded to YouTube for their members. It had 40 views or something like that, and it happened in September 2019. And I couldn't find any press or really anything about. Well, maybe there was one article that they did an interview with a kind of a trade. Off of when that happened. But anyway, the video itself was, there was a point where he started talking about the biggest barriers in terms of the marketplace. And the one thing that they had on the slide was misinformation from the ACLU, EFF, Georgetown Center for Privacy and Technology. And at the end of the day, I mean, NEC believes that a kind of all-pervasive law enforcement agency powered by facial recognition makes the world safer, or at least that's what they say. And if you believe that surveillance equals safety, anything that goes against surveillance is kind of hinders the public law enforcement ability to make people safer. That's what they'll tell you. I mean, I think also a good argument is that it's their bottom line to sell this technology to as many governments as possible and to as many big ticket spenders as possible. So to talk about organizations like the ACLU and EFF and Georgetown that have called for moratoriums or bans, that's going to hurt their bottom line, and it's not good for them. So I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that there are people who are well-meaning in these companies. I don't think it's all cynical dollars and cents, but I think that there's also an element where it is a business. So like everything else, it's nuanced.
That's right, indeed.